Plan A. Saturday afternoon, last week, leave for Moultonborough early in the afternoon so as to have a scenic and leisurely drive through the White Mountains on the way to the Moultonborough parsonage. Dick had a Partners in Development board meeting to attend, but he assured me that he would pick me up at my sister's at the Gilmartins no later than 2 p.m. so as to afford Pastor Paul his personal space at the parsonage. A sidebar. Dick is never late. It's 2 o'clock. Dick is not there. 2:15. I try him on his cell phone. It's not on. 2:30. No Dick. 3. Not there. 3:30. No Dick. 4 p.m. I make my umpteenth call to his cell phone, and he picks up. Where are you? At home. What happened? Nothing. What happened is that he forgot that he was to pick me up at Debbie's, assumed I was out visiting, and so in the interim, he took a 2-hour-long winter's nap. Plan B, get to Moultonborough. The message this morning, make the most of the Plan Bs in your life. Why? Because it's the Plan Bs in life that we so often experience. And it's in those Plan Bs that God so often gives us his best gifts. In today's text, we learn that one of Paul's biggest disappointments after his conversion was his failure to spread the word in a region called Bithynia. It was no wonder he wanted to go there. The area held promise. It had communities that were bustling with energy. It had Greek-speaking cities, and reportedly it was prosperous, one of the wealthiest provinces in Asia Minor. Why go to Bithynia? Why not go? It was a no-brainer. Yet for some reason, which isn't actually explained, Paul's way is blocked. He can't go. End of story. And so, instead, he is forced to head south to a place called Troas. This is Plan B. He wanted Bithynia. He got Troas. What a familiar phenomenon to all. He had to take one of life's detours. Yet, ironically, it was while Paul was in Troas that he had the dream of a man from Macedonia saying, "Come over and help us here." It was that dream that led Paul to go west, to instead cross over into Greece, which eventually led him to Rome. And that move of bringing the Christian faith to Europe marked one of the most significant events in history. Is there anyone here who has not wanted Bithynia and gotten Troas? A couple of weeks ago, I read a book review about Ross King's recent book entitled Leonardo and the Last Supper. And in it, King relates the fact that Da Vinci's Plan A was to make a giant equestrian statue of the reigning Duke of Milan. That was Leonardo's principal patron. But That project came to a screeching halt when in 1494, the patron decided to use the 75 tons of bronze not for that monument Leonardo had been working on, but for 3 urgently needed cannons. Yes, Leonardo did get another commission, but Plan B was not the one he sought. He had never worked in fresco, nor did that technique appeal to him. It required that one paint quickly on wet plaster, and Leonardo much preferred to paint slowly. And furthermore, he had never worked on a painting so large, 15 feet tall and almost 30 feet wide. But nonetheless, he undertook the job, probably because he had little choice. Leonardo himself described the commission in these words: "Things assigned, not my art." Figuratively speaking, he moved to Troas, and 4 years later, the world of art was graced with an immortal masterpiece. I have wanted Bithynia and gotten Troas. When I applied to schools, my first choice was Wellesley College. That was Plan A. My mother's college, my grandmother's college, my sister's college, my aunt's college, even the alma mater of 2 cousins. But I didn't get in. I was rejected. So I really appreciate these sound effects. They're great. Violin. Where are you, Susan? So off I went to my second choice school, and I was more miserable there than I could tell you. But, because I was so wretchedly unhappy, I left during my sophomore year to study in Heidelberg, which in turn led to a year in Paris, a year in Madrid, and a final semester in Berlin. Plan B had turned out to be one of the best things that could have happened to me. And parenthetically, it was even less expensive than my education in the States would have been, including transportation. An extraordinary gift in my life. And somehow the Plan Bs in life keep following us all through our days. Most people decide early on that they want to live their entire lives in their own homes. That's Plan A. But then, ready or not, the Plan Bs surface. It comes in the form of hiring a home health aide or moving to assisted living. Or we marry, never anticipating the possibility of a divorce, but then Plan B. Our children who never smoked or drank throughout high school develop a drug habit in college. Plan B. A well-paying job which we expect to have forever evaporates almost overnight. Plan B. Yet living with disappointment, the key to keeping Christ alive in your life is to learn a lesson from the Apostle Paul. And I think essentially it's triple-pronged. First, whatever you do, avoid self-pity. Paul could so easily have gone there. He could have said, "Here I have given up everything for the sake of Jesus Christ. I could have been a leading rabbi in Jerusalem by now. I could have status. I could have a prestigious position." Instead, what did he do? He spent 3 years in Arabia, 14 years in Cilicia, and finally, Paul gets his footing in Asia Minor, and now his master plan won't work. He's denied entrance into Bithynia. What's with that? Paul might so easily have wallowed in self-pity, but he refuses to do that. Instead, and this is the second lesson he teaches us, he wastes no time, keeps to task, and immediately begins thinking about how he might do valuable work in Troas. In other words, to use a colloquial expression, he decides to bloom where he is planted. His overriding purpose was to bring awareness of the living Christ to whomever he meets. And because his ultimate goal was to serve God and not to gratify himself, he finds a way to do that, even within the confines of Plan B. It's amazing how God works. And thirdly, Paul demonstrates the power that comes from positive thinking, even before Norman Vincent Peale. God can be glorified within Plan Bs if you have the will and the courage to make that happen. Put a 30-foot plank on the ground 5 feet wide, and most of us can walk it from one end to the other. But put that same plank at the height of a 5-story building, and none of us would be willing to try it. Why not? Because inevitably we imagine ourselves falling. We envision ourselves as defeated. And so we are. The hardest part for most of us when we arrive in Troas is that we think of ourselves as already being defeated, as having missed our goal. We wanted Bithynia, and we got Troas. And so mentally and emotionally, we plant a big red F across our souls. It's as if there are 2 components in life: our Plan A's, which connote success, and Plan B's, which mean failure. But we forget about what God can do, not only with B's, but C's, D's, E's, F's, G's. And also we define ourselves by our defeats. Paul, on the other hand, insists on allowing God to transform our detours into destinations, our setbacks into success, and our life's lead into gold. If we fast forward to the end of Paul's life, we remember that his last days and weeks were spent in a jail cell in Rome, in a dark and dirty dungeon, yet another Plan B. Nothing he had originally thought would happen. Yet it was there that he penned these poignant words: "We know that all things work together for good for those who love God, who are called according to his purpose." Someone recently wrote, and I really do like this quote, "Despair is presumptuous. It is saying something about the future that we have no right to say. Who are we to set limits on what God can do?" I'm going to close with a reading called Welcome to Holland, because it's based on Plan B. It's based on a piece written by Emily Pearl Kingsley, and it was sent to me by a young mother in our church a year after her first baby was diagnosed with Down syndrome. She had planned to go to Bithynia, but she went instead to Troas. When you're going to have a baby, it's like planning a fabulous trip to Italy. You buy guidebooks and learn phrases in Italian. You dream about going to the Colosseum, seeing Michelangelo's David, and riding a gondola in Venice. And finally, after months of anticipation, the day finally arrives and off you go. But then the plane lands, and the captain says, "Welcome to Holland." Holland, you ask? What do you mean, Holland? I signed up for Italy. I'm supposed to be in Italy. All my life, I've dreamt of going to Italy. Yet there was a change in flight plans. I've landed in Holland, and I have to stay here. Now I have to go out and buy new guidebooks and learn a new language. And now I meet a whole new group of people I would never have met before. I find that Holland is a different place than I expected. It's slower paced than Italy, less flashy. But after I was there for a while and caught my breath, I looked around and began to notice things. Things I would never have seen in Italy: windmills and tulips, and yes, Rembrandt. My friends are still coming and going to Italy, talking about the wonderful time they're having there. And I know that for the rest of my life, I will say, yes, that's where I had planned to go to. But if I spend my life bemoaning the fact that I didn't get to Italy, I would never be able to enjoy the very special, the very lovely things about Holland. Our God is, as theologian John Claypool called him, an ingenious alchemist, continually ready to transform our lead into gold, our defeats into victory, our tragedies into blessings. And so may we allow God to continue to work in our lives as we eschew self-pity, as we focus on blooming wherever we are planted, and as we live for the sake of the living Christ. Amen.